Hi, and welcome to Liberty's Cage, a podcast that shines a spotlight on the broken machinery of America's justice system. Prisons that punish more than they rehabilitate, courts that favor wealth and power over true justice, and a society that struggles to reintegrate those who have served their time. Ignited by the unjust persecution of January 6 patriots who stood tall for America, we expose the lies of the weaponized system and amplify the voices of those silenced by media smears and the government overreach. From overcrowded cells to biased gavels, we reveal the truth, share stories of courage, and call on every American to rise up and restore a justice system that honors our nation's founding principles. This is our fight for justice for all, one episode at a time. I'm your host, Sarah McAbee, and I will be joined with my co-host, the incredibly gifted and warrior of a man, Shane Jenkins. It's been a really hard week for January 6 defendants and those involved in the January 6 community because unfortunately, in the wee hours of the morning on Sunday, June 22nd, Bart Shively, a Marine veteran and January 6 defendant, died from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Bart had no prior record to January 6. In fact, as I just said, he was a veteran. He served this country honorably. And because he did that, he contracted non-Hodgkin's lymphoma from drinking the water at Camp Lejeune. He was jailed for 18 months, and Stand in the Gap is raising funds for his funeral and celebration of life. You can go to standinthegap.foundation/Bart. Our goal is to not only provide for his funeral, but to get January 6 defendants and those that he loved there to give him a very well farewell. Bart endured chemotherapy in DC's CDF, and it was inadequate care. Now, mind you, Bart was jailed a day before he was supposed to start chemo in the real world, and at that point, he had stage 2 cancer. When he was released 18 months later, mind you, the judge said in his sentencing the only reason that she was releasing him 18 months time served is because she did not want a death on her hands. When he got out, he had stage 4 cancer. And so the jail failed him in so many ways. There were times where defendants were sitting in solitary confinement and Bart came back from getting radiation or chemotherapy, and they threw him back in a concrete cell with nothing but a metal slab to sleep on. And there were times that other defendants didn't even know if he was alive. They were yelling across, trying to get him to move around and at least breathe. And mind you, the guards would taunt and laugh at what was going on. What happened to seeing the humanity in these individuals? They were still American citizens. This was before he was even convicted of any supposed crime that happened on January 6th. And instead of the life he should have lived the last 4 years before he passed, he spent it fighting the federal government. And nobody should ever have to do that. We are proud to stand by Bart. My co-host Shane, former January 6 defendant, was able to go to Bart. He lived in Pennsylvania and was able to go spend some time with him just days before he had passed. Bart was one of the 20 men that sang on the Justice for All record that went platinum, that President Trump was involved in, and he received a Billboard plaque that Shane was able to give to him just days before he had passed. Now going into justice for Bart, because Bart died with these crimes still on his record. January 6 defendants were pardoned fully and unconditionally by President Trump on January 20th of this year, with 14 of those defendants that just had their sentences commuted for what we think will come out later to play out in the court system itself. But Bart was one of the others that was completely pardoned. However, many people don't know that even when you go for a background check now, these January 6 defendants, these charges still come up. They are not expunged from their record. So for Bart, our goal is to get those records expunged and for him to have a military funeral. He wanted a Marine casket. They will do the fold of honor for the flag and the rendering of honors, the 21 gun salute. I do believe that there will be a motorcycle a group that is coming together to honor him, and people that are going to be doing a flag wave. So if you are in the area and you would like to be involved with that, you can email us, info@standinthegap.foundation, and I'm sure Shane will be there. So I'm sure we will have some video footage to show you all, hopefully in the next few weeks, so we can continue to honor Bart, because we have always said we can never let these sacrifices go in vain for January 6th defendants. And they do deserve answers. So I'm so happy to announce that President Trump said a new January 6th committee will be formed to investigate the DOJ and the FBI actions. It's going to be led by Ed Martin, who is now part of the administration, who before being a part of the administration was a huge advocate for January 6th defense. And it aims to probe the weaponization against conservatives. So our hope is that this investigation proves that the government waged war on American people, and they were set up on January 6th. They truly walked into a trap. And we need to know how many, not only FBI agents were on the ground that day dressed in plain clothes, but what other three-letter agencies had individuals, the DOJ, DHS, ATF, all of those individuals. And then we also need to know, like Chip Roy had provided video of ghost buses, as they were called, that came into DC prior, and all of these individuals got out. They went, and on the march, they had tons of different vendors where they dressed. They also have video of people changing behind bushes into brand new MAGA hats, MAGA jackets. And so you knew they weren't there as true supporters. Now, mind you, we can talk more about this in depth with Shane, but mind you that President Trump was late to the ellipse, much like he runs on Trump time, and he was late to the ellipse. And so many of the people, many of the defendants weren't even at the Capitol when the barricades were breached. And so if they stayed for President Trump's entire speech, and he said peacefully and patriotically, make your voices heard down at the Capitol, they marched down and they were set up. The barricades had already been removed. They charged them with trespassing, but there were no signs. And so we deserve answers. And we need to know that this committee is going to be a legit committee, because people like Barry Loudermilk are going to lead it, but people like Jim Jordan and Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson said that he was going to release the 14,000 hours or 44,000 hours of video footage. And America needs to see that. I think if America could see the footage for themselves, they would realize that the media and the government has lied to them for so long. And that would be a little bit of justice for these defendants. But I think that would be the first step. And I do believe that Shane has now joined us. Shane, can you hear us?
Absolutely. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. So a little bit earlier, we have about 4 minutes left, but we were talking about Bart and about his passing and the inadequate care. But do you have some memories that you would like to share of Bart?
Yeah, I mean, I just think back to how hard and I didn't know Bart before January the 6th or being locked up in the DC jail with him, but I do remember him just suffering. And I know I can't imagine, I was miserable enough without suffering from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. But that man was literally a stage 2 when he got arrested, and then was supposed to get his first, and you may have covered all this, was supposed to get his first chemo treatment the day after he got arrested, and missed it because he got arrested, and then was denied his treatment for a long time in the DC jail. But I just remember him suffering and having, these radiation sores from the treatment that he finally did get. And it was just horrific. And then the diet in there that was awful. And I don't know if Bart was diabetic or if he was borderline diabetic, but the meals they fed him were just horrible. There was no seasoning. It was torture. And there was nothing that man did on January 6th that deserved him to remain in custody. He had no criminal record prior to that. He had served honorably in the armed forces. And to keep him locked away for no reason and deny him his medical care was just egregious and torturous. And it was horrible to have to watch. And I can only imagine how horrible it was for him. And that's like the one thing that I can take away from him passing, is just that he's no longer suffering. And it's just horrific that our country would allow something like that to go on, that they would treat somebody who served honorably in our military, that they would allow them to suffer like that. And then now it just breaks my heart now that we've been pardoned and we've been released and gone through all this stuff. And now we're out here free and we're all trying to put our lives back together. And it has been emotionally and mentally taxing for all of us. And then now to see the victory that is coming, and he doesn't even get to enjoy it. And he was poisoned by our government at Camp Lejeune, and then now treated horribly on January 6th, treated horribly by the DC jail, and had to go through all that. And now that things are finally starting to turn around. He doesn't even get to enjoy that. It's just it's a tragedy. It's a travesty, and it is disgusting. And the people who are responsible for that deserve to pay seriously for it.
For sure, there absolutely has to be accountability across the board. And one thing that people have talked about is to do something in honor of Bart is to get legislation not only presented but passed in his name for other people. There are other inmates that are going through this, not as similar. All January 6 defendants have been released, but just American citizens that are serving time in prison are also being treated this way. So can you talk a little bit about that sort of legislation?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, for instance, the prison that I got it released from, and I mean, we may have talked about this before, but H. pylori is rampant in that prison, and it's people are regularly going to medical in that facility. It's Terre Haute, Indiana, medium security federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana. Look it up. But multiple people always testing positive for H. pylori, which is a precursor which causes stomach cancer. Because the water is poisoned there. And we've talked about how they remain open because they pay the fine and they make a profit off the factory they have. But that is just something basic that should not, they should be closing that prison down. Everybody should be moved out of there because all those people are going to get out and they're going to end up with stomach cancer. And you're going to see this on the news or on the commercial. Were you at Terre Haute, Indiana from this time to this time? We'll sign up for this civil suit so you can get paid peanuts. But you're going to die from stomach cancer. So it's egregious.
I think America would be shocked if they found out what went on in the American prison systems. And to talk about numbers, there's to back up everything that not only that you have said, but what other people have grieved, the grievance process for what's going on. I mean, truly, our American prison system is like a third world country. And 1 in 2 Americans have had a loved one, an immediate family member that has been incarcerated. Really is something that has to change, and I hope it is under President Trump. And when we get back, we are going to talk about not only the numbers for January 6th, but the shocking numbers of the Federal Bureau of Prisons.
I'm out of here. No, no. Free stuff for all. Don't have to be such a downer.
You bow to the master staff. Come to me. Oh my god, this guy's from Jersey.
Hi, how you doing? Fuck up my stage.
I'm pretty sure I'm a woman.
No, you're not, Steve. Oh! Oh!
Wet on my side.
Now instead of a poke, you're getting a smack!
What have I done?
Hi, my name is Elena Ruseva, aka Megalangela. Please check my art at www.megalangela.vip.
It's me, Joe the Box, the America First Warehouse. No, it's the America First Motor Club here in Ronkonkoma, 9013th Avenue. Sunday morning, we're opening up 9 a.m. Beautiful artwork from Nelson Medina. We just passed him over there. We're coming in Sunday at 9 a.m. hot. We're going to raise some money for our veterans. The event is free. You make some donations, buy a hamburger. There will be food, plenty of it. We love this country. Congratulations, President Trump. Congratulations to our country. One nation, under God, Sunday morning.
Are you a musician, comedian, actor, filmmaker, or artist who stands for traditional American values? Do you believe in the preservation of our nation, our culture, and our freedoms? If you share our passion for America and want to use your talents to make a difference, we want to hear from you. Our mission is clear. Through the arts, we uphold the principles of freedom, faith, family, and the American spirit. It's time to step up to the mic and make your voices heard. So contact us at AmericanConservativeArtists.com.
America First Warehouse was really the most patriotic venue that you can ever imagine. We wanted to build something for people to be able to come to and feel so comfortable and so relaxed because there is nothing out there like it. We give an opportunity for people to really feel good about themselves and about this great country.
Welcome back to Liberty's Cage. Now we are going to talk about a cost breakdown. So the Federal Bureau of Prisons, it costs American taxpayers $8.1 billion a year to run Shane, I think it's like 122 federal prisons across America.
I think that's correct. We have about 110 just state prisons in Texas. So that gives you an idea. There's federal prisons all over the United States, but multiple compounds with multiple prisons on the same compound. So yes.
So to incarcerate Americans, even some Americans that don't deserve it, like January 6 defendants, taxpayers pay $8.1 billion a year. So a 2021 Senate report estimated that separate from this $8.1 billion a year, that $2.7 billion is what it cost American taxpayers for January 6th, including $1.1 billion for law enforcement, $25 million to incarcerate 869 people, and $200 million in legal costs. Shane, did January 6 defendants have $200 million in their back pocket to pay for their legal fees?
Absolutely not. And as a matter of fact, it's very expensive to hire a federal attorney. And if you could not afford an attorney, they would appoint you attorneys like my own Maria Jacob in the court-appointed realm in the district, who said that the Bill of Rights was not a legal document and that she didn't really adhere to the Constitution. She didn't believe that those were legally binding documents. So if you couldn't afford an attorney, they would appoint the absolute worst one that they could, probably the most progressive, left-leaning, liberal, Islamo-Marxist attorney that they could find for you.
And if anybody has ever had to go through any sort of court proceedings and had to use a public defender either on the state, county, or federal level, you know that they could be good attorneys, but they are completely overwhelmed. They have cases that pile up on their desk. And so a win for an attorney is for a little bit of a less sentence than what the government offered. But as Shane has talked about before, the sentences that they were offering these individuals were absolutely egregious. And the sentence at the max of these sentencing guidelines, stacking charges against these people. And it's just sad, because these were average American citizens, a lot of them blue collar workers, the 72% were veterans or first responders. They don't have $200 million to go and represent them. So you're up against the weight of the federal government, who has endless resources and endless money. The other thing that they would do was they would bring in expert witnesses. When an expert witness just for a mere one day costs about $20,000. So for the DOJ, for the 1,400 prosecutions, and it was in the FBI, raised those costs, but 5,000 FBI employees were used for January 6th, and it's the largest criminal investigation in American history. The House Select Committee spent $3.3 million between April of 2022 and June of 2022. Only 3 months, and they spent $3.3 million. I would like to know how our viewers feel about their hard-earned tax dollars going to prosecute innocent American citizens. I believe it's more egregious than the $300 million spent on plankton research and hamsters fighting on steroids that was passed in the Omnibus bill. Right, Shane?
Yeah. No, it's absolutely ridiculous. And you were talking about the attorneys, and I'd go back to, so we moved away from the court appointed, and then you had these grifters attach themselves, like Bill Shipley or John Pierce, or these people attach themselves to our cases, and they are raising money. They're taking us behind. We couldn't see it, but they were raising money off of so I hired on with John Pierce, and now John Pierce puts me on his nonprofit website and puts my, my case history or what's relevant to me personally up on their website. And they go in the court and they absolutely do nothing. Or you have these attorneys that are, I would love to fight for you. I'd love to fight for you. And you pay them all this money, and then they basically just go into the courtroom and take a knee, because these people are part of this DC world, or typically we're a part of this DC, caviar and champagne, khaki pants, sweater vest club that in the DC area And if you go in there and you fight for one of these January Sixers, well, next thing you know, you're not going to be invited to the next caviar and champagne party. So you don't want to go in there. You want to go in there and put on a show, but you don't want to do too good of a job, because then you're going to be excommunicated from all these elites, the elitist parties that go on in DC. And so it was very, very difficult for us to find anybody who would represent us and do a good job of it. So,
Or you have attorneys that quite literally could represent somebody like Jeffrey Epstein that you get on the phone with, and you tell them everything about the case. And the attorney comes back and says, Sarah, there's no reason for me not to believe you about the facts of these cases. But even if the facts of these cases are true, I am not going to represent this person because I can't, because my kids go to the same school as the judges. We are all a part of the same yacht club. We go golfing together. And so they can go represent somebody like Jeffrey Epstein in front of these same judges, but they can't represent January 6 defendants. This is what happens in the courtrooms. And this is why they don't allow cameras in these courtrooms, because truly the only people that knew what went on in these courtrooms were the people that sat in and listened. And a few of them would have media rooms where people like the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys and very high profile cases, journalists would come in, but they had to sit there every single day, because if not, something would happen and they would miss it. So going back to taxpayers' dollars, or what we spent having our loved ones incarcerated for January 6th, the FWD.US this year published something called I Can't Afford It, or We Can't Afford It. Families pay $350 billion a year for incarcerated loved ones. $350 billion a year. Now, mind you, most of these people, January 6 defendants in particular, had the breadwinner taken away from their family. They for about $5,000 a month is what they estimate. I can tell, or $5,000 a year, sorry, is what they estimate. I can tell you, I spent over $5,000. Much more than $5,000. Why? Because we had to pay for tablet time. We had to pay for movies. We had to pay for music. We had to pay for commissary, because Shane can talk about the food in the DC jail wasn't adequate at all. And so you had to buy your own commissary. You had to buy your own clothes, your own toiletry items. And so this all goes back, talking to your loved ones visiting you in prison. And as I had talked about earlier, 1 in 2 American adults, so approximately 113 million people, have had an immediate family member that has been incarcerated. So our audience has also been affected by this, but January 6th gave us a platform to talk about this stuff, but it is far from just the 1,600 January 6 defendants. Wouldn't you agree, Shane?
I would say too, in regards to that, like we need to get some numbers on this, but the least educated and the poorest economically impacted people this is the people that are paying this 300, I guess it was $350 billion that you said. And so not only do you have the father or the son, or typically the father, the son, brother, whoever it is, go to jail. Now they're out of the family. Now mom, the kid's mom, or whoever, sister or grandmother, is taking care of this person inside. And so not only are they suffering, but the family's suffering. And now the burden is on them to get a good lawyer. Because if you take the court appointed, you're probably going to go in there and you're going to get a plea deal. But if you go into court, and I'm speaking specifically to state, but if you go in with a good attorney, you're going to get a better plea offer. You're going to get a better deal. So it is set up for the people who have money to be, they're going to be more lenient on people that come in with a good paid attorney. Unless it's some high profile crime, you're probably going to get what you get. But typically on the lower level crime, it depends on who you go into the courtroom with. Another thing that I wanted to say, you were talking about them being at the yacht club and this, that, the other. I had an attorney, Jim Shaw, who was my state attorney in Tarrant County. He played golf with a judge named Judge Drago. Both these people are dead now, so there's nothing that can be done about it. But he's like, oh, I can get you a good deal, Shane. You know, I play golf with Judge Drago all the time. And so they called the judge, let him go Drago. But basically it was a bribe system where the attorneys would take the money to the judge and the judge would be lenient on their client. Sometimes the lawyer would work, well, be like, okay, you're going to let these 3 clients go. I'm going to sacrifice this one up here to you, and they're going to get hammered, but we're going to let these other 3 get a good deal. So it's a very, very corrupt system, and there needs to be checks and balances. And we've got to reimagine this thing, because it is just a total and utter failure. What has been going on in our courtrooms and these lawyers, it's just ridiculous.
I listened to a podcast a few weeks ago that talked about each of the three branches of government. And the one that was talking about the judicial system, she specifically talked about how our founding fathers were so focused on leaving the regime over in England that they really didn't have time to set up this judicial system. And I truly believe 249 years later, 48 in a few days, that we are now paying the effects of them not putting something into place so long ago. I mean, you have these judges that have complete overreach, no accountability, because these judges that are in Washington, D.C., that these congressional members that knew what was happening in the courtrooms, whether they sent staffers or they had loved ones that went and talked to them or they read the transcripts on their own, they knew what was happening. These congressional members have oversight and can go and file impeachments against these judges, and yet they don't. Is that something that you're hoping with this new January 6th committee that will be brought up?
I mean, how many times have we been told, oh, this committee, we're going to get in there and we're going to get some truth and we're going to figure this out. But again, you see this, and I think it comes back to the old yacht club and the champagne caviar parties. These people in DC, I feel like it's a theater when they're in the Capitol building. And they're going to impeach this person. They're going to do this or that. And all them and their staffers go hang out at the same bars, at the same fancy restaurants. And it's just like this whole theater that they put on before us. And like you said earlier I hope to God that they do something, but I haven't seen, have we seen any committee have any teeth? Have we seen any committee send anything to the DOJ that has accomplished anything? I mean, maybe I'm missing something. Have you thought of anything that has come out of any one of these committees that has shown us anything?
No, it's truly political theater. And I will tell you, as somebody who has testified in front of Congress, you see what they do. Their staffers text them. They're not even sitting in there. Their staffers text them and say, hey, you're up next for your 5 minutes. They come in a back door. They read what they need to read for 5 minutes, ask their questions, and they leave again. So I truly believe that it all needs to be burnt to the ground. And we can talk about that when we come back.
Queens Village Republican Club is America's oldest Republican club, founded in 1875. Situated in President Trump's hometown in Queens, New York, we are America First MAGA Republicans, empowering fellow Republicans to get involved in the game of politics at the grassroots level. We host inspiring monthly club meetings on the first Thursday of each month at 8 p.m. For more information, please go to our website at www.qvgop.org.
Corporate transfer, fine professional, moving and storage, and inventory management.
The dehumanizing rhetoric of Adolf Hitler. Donald Trump's language mirrors this directly.
Well, Hitler was duly elected.
Let's deal with Hitler, okay?
I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that is Mussolini Hitler-like language.
You say Nazi enough times, someone's going to actually have the guts to do it.
Donald Trump would invoke Adolf Hitler.
What percentage of this event happening was due to Donald Trump's rhetoric?
Don't miss Trump next time.
What do you make of the excess deaths?
None of us, not the president, not those hypothetical guys in the smoky rooms fully know what's going on, but we can speak about the unfolding of recent history with certainty.
Donald Trump is an existential threat to our democracy.
That is not how it works. That is a threat to democracy.
No. No.
You anti-Semitic piece of
When you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit.
Free fries when you get vaccinated? Mmm. Vaccination.
Welcome back to Liberty's Cage. So in recent news, the BOP faces a staffing crisis. 4,000 vacant positions, $437.5 million in overtime has been spent thus far, and a hiring freeze raises safety concerns. And a Virginia prison saw MS-13 attacks on guards. Shane, you witnessed prison chaos. How do staffing issues affect inmates?
Well, you see these guards that are working, and I want to say up to 72-hour shifts, literally 3 days straight in prison. And when your butt's on the line and you've got these guards are the only thing between you and like getting stabbed to death, how would you feel if the guard hadn't slept in 3 days and he's clearly not paying attention or not worried about what's going on with you? So it's very dangerous from an inmate perspective. It's very dangerous. But instead of hiring more guards and paying them a regular, I mean, I know they make a ton of money. That's how they make their money, is on overtime. And so when you think about how much extra money that's cost just to pay what you would pay a regular officer, regular 40-hour week, it's a ridiculous amount of money that they're throwing out the window. And I understand they have to keep these places staffed. I know President Trump has talked about closing down the camps and stuff like that, to where if you don't need a fence around the prison you're in, you probably don't need to be in prison. You could be at home or be under some kind of supervision or some kind of monitoring while you're at home, which only makes sense, right? Now, some of those operations that they provide at the camps are necessary for these other prisons to operate, whether it's whatever, yard care, whatever it is, whatever they're doing. But a majority of those places could be closed down. And I just really believe that we have an opportunity here, if we can seize this, to reimagine how this whole system works. And I think we've got to strike while the iron's hot, but we've got to get the people behind us, and we've got to plan out some legislation and some restructuring of the BOP to get it done.
So when you say 72 hours straight, did you ever worry about the understaffing putting you or your fellow inmates at risk?
I mean, that wasn't really an issue. I think the issue for me was the officers directing traffic on when the gang hits were going to go on and all that kind of stuff. That was more of a concern to me. It was like, they are well aware of what's going on in the prison. They're well aware when things are going to happen. They even dictate when some of those things are going to happen. And they even use some of the inmates to get rid of some of the problems that are the inmates that are problematic for the guards, whether they're a legit inmate, because there are, this guy might have rape, sex offender, whatever. Nobody wants those guys on the yard, and that's kind of understandable. But these guys might be a legit inmate, good paperwork, not a snitch, not a rat, never done anything to anybody, but he had caused a problem with the guards. And so now they want him off the yard. So they use the gang members to get him off the yard. And it's just kind of like I've said before, I've done time in Texas State Prison, some of the worst prisons in Texas, whether it's Cofield, Robertson, Michaels. So there's some of the worst ones. And nothing that I saw in the state of Texas compared to anything that I saw in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I mean, I would say on a scale of 100, the Texas State prisons at the worst sometimes was like a 20, but the things that I saw in federal prison were like an 80 to 90. They were just horrific. Like people dying. I was like, what is going on in here? So, yeah.
No, the entire system needs to be reformed. And one thing that we have talked about at Stand in the Gap is working on a federal level, because that's how January 6 defendants were charged in their most recent experience. But once we have the 122 BOP's facility in check, then we need to go to all of the different states and say, all right, this worked on a federal level. You need to implement this at a state level, even county and city. Just because it's a smaller jail doesn't mean that this stuff is happening. And for privately funded prisons to exist in America is astonishing to me. Now, we know that they make money off the backs of you all. The federal government does it too. But privately funded prisons, Shane, how do you feel about those?
I think that prisons should be funded by the government, by the local government. It shouldn't be for profit. It shouldn't be ran um, by any private entity that it operates on the stock market or whatever it is. It shouldn't be a for-profit entity. It should be the communities taking care of it, because these people are from these communities and they're going to be released back into these communities. So these are the people that need to be worked. It needs to be taken care of on a state or local level, whether it's you split up the state into districts or whatever it is. So you can, I believe you should handcraft your incarceration to fit the needs of that specific community. They may be different from community to community or state to state, but they've got to get away from it being about profit, because the only person that loses on the profit margin is the inmates. And that's the same thing. And it kind of goes back to commissary. If you think about even at the ones that are not privately funded, like a county jail, the sheriff picks the person who does the commissary. And so you've got these 12-cent ramen noodle soups and they're selling them for $1. Why is that? Why is it the least educated, the most poor people are being taxed on these food items that they need to get because the food you're feeding them is horrible? Why should they pay exorbitant prices? That is some kind of, I forget what you call it, but it's price gouging is what they like to call. How about a fair profit, whether it's a 10% markup on it, 20%, whatever it is, so that company can operate and make a profit. It shouldn't be an exorbitant profit at the expense of the poorest, least educated people that are already having a bad enough time being away from their families. And then the stuff you're feeding them and charging them extra for is full of sodium and full of carbs. There's not even any like protein or anything that's good for people in there. There is just so many. It is so frustrating when you think about the quality of the diet, with the way people are treated, the way they're housed, the way they're charged, the way the courts operate. There's so many different levels of things that we could improve. If we could improve one or two things, it would be far superior than what people have been dealing with and what I've been dealing with a lot of my life. Obviously, yes, Shane, stay out of jail and it'll be fine, but people are going to continue to go into jail. So we need to figure out how to make this work for the benefit of everybody, not just the people locked up, not the people on the outside, but everybody as a whole in the community.
I think there's a little bit of hope. William K. Marshall III was finally appointed as the BOP director April of 2025, and he aims to expand home confinement via the First and Second Chance Acts and truly have those implemented. But along his side, his deputy, Josh Smith, is a pardoned ex-inmate, and he is pushing rehabilitation. As a former inmate that is now the deputy, does that give you any hope, Shane?
It does, because if there's anybody, it takes, just like the pardons are, being somebody who was overcharged with the drug crimes. Alice Johnson, I believe is her name. Somebody who's been in that situation, who knows what it's like to be behind enemy lines, as we call it, to be in there and in that situation. It's vitally important that you have somebody in there that can empathize with these people, and I only think that could be a benefit. I don't see how that could be detrimental.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And so people are asking on X if they will fix the abuses like the January 6th defendants and like Bart faced. My hope is that some of these individuals will be involved with this new committee, specifically talking about not only the DC jail, but the federal prison system as well. Because my hope for this new committee is they march every single one of you that did substantial amount of time in prison or even home confinement, marches each and every one of you in front of this committee, so it goes on the congressional record of what you all went through.
No, absolutely. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, we've talked about several things, but the medical treatment, it is absolutely abhorrent. And that's pretty much across the board, Texas prisons, DC jail, federal prisons. There's so many different topics that we could talk about. And whether it was the politicization, I can't even say it, politicization of the DOJ and the courts, or whether it was the weaponization of the government and the way they went after us for political reasons, and just the overcharging to the treatment while we were in the jail, the food, the medical treatment, there's so many different layers to it that we could do a podcast about it.
Maybe we will. So I think, no, from the time that you are indicted, truly, to the time that you are released and even years after that, because once you are a felon, I mean, it's kind of different for misdemeanors, but once you are a felon, you are labeled, you have a scarlet letter on you because you're never going to be able to rent an apartment. It's always going to come up on your background check. And so it's really at that point, it is who you know, because it doesn't matter what kind of career you had previously, doesn't matter where you went to school, how you're rehabilitated, people will always judge a book by its cover. And so I think like that is part of our duty as American citizens, is to teach other people to give these individuals a chance. We've seen with January 6 defendants, it's been very hard for them to get jobs because they've been labeled a domestic terrorist, an insurrectionist. And so the people that I do know that have jobs, it's because they knew somebody that was willing to take a chance on them, that knew January 6th was a setup, not anybody that is apolitical or anybody that is on the left, because January 6 defendants still have this target on their back.
No, and it is and I think that's another aspect. We talk about the legislating our way out of these things, and I think that there needs to be a healthy conversation about gun rights for people who, and I understand you don't want somebody to have a gun who killed somebody, or you don't want somebody to have a gun who robbed somebody, and I understand that argument. However, what about drug dealers? What about, whatever, people who defaulted on their child support, whatever it is? There's different reasons that you should, when you do your time, should you become a whole citizen when it's over with? And that's a conversation we need to have. And the same thing with employment. For instance, in Houston, we have a lot of port. We have a port here. And so there's a thing called a TWIC card that gives you access to going into the ports. And it's very difficult to get one as a felon. And it doesn't have to have anything to do with your crime. It could be, it doesn't have to have, and it shouldn't be that way. So either you're a whole citizen when you do your time or you're not. So, and I understand maybe on parole, you don't get these rights back, but once you've done your parole and completed that and you don't have any pending charges, now perhaps you're considered a full felon, your scarlet letter is removed. I just think there's a conversation that needs to be had on so many different levels, because I feel like people need a fresh start, and it's very discouraging for people when they get out and they're having to go through all of these hurdles to get their life on track. And so we want them to be successful. I want them to be successful. It behooves all of us to be successful and not to fail or stumble or to get lured back into their old lifestyle. So
even their voting rights. I mean, I can't believe that people in prison or felons can't vote. Every American citizen, if you are an American citizen, you should be able to vote, whether you're incarcerated or not. I mean, we say all the time, people that are on government programs, they're able to vote. So why are felons not able to vote? It's just an egregious system that absolutely needs to be reformed. And when we come back, we're going to talk about life beyond the bars.
Corrupt judges, broken families, families torn apart. This isn't justice. If you've been wronged by the system, join us. Don't stand alone. Hi, I'm Gary Jacobs, president of Americans for Legal Reform. We're the oldest legal reform group in the United States. The justice system in the United States should be transparent, fair, and open to everybody and accessible. Unfortunately, many times that's not the case. At Americans for Legal Reform, we are here to help. Join the movement. Visit AmericansForLegalReform.com and help reform the system before it fails you.
The America First Ultra MAGA Store. For all your MAGA needs. We sell t-shirts, tumblers, flags, hats, sneakers, bumper stickers, and a whole lot more. The most patriotic America First retail store. The America First Ultra MAGA Store.
Welcome, everybody, to the Not So Newlywed Show, where three couples are going to compete for really great prizes. Okay, Donna, we asked Mike, who complained first on your honeymoon, you or him?
What do I think?
Yeah, what do you think?
I think he said...
Lisa, this ain't the SATs. Just tell us what... Donna, who complained first on the honeymoon?
I'm sure it was me, but I have no idea.
Shauna is right.
No, it's always me.
What celebrity would you pick for a one-day pass?
For me?
Yeah, for you, not for him.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon! Wow! Who do you hate the most on her side? That rotten no...
There are so many choices.
Thank you all, and thank you for coming out.
name is Elena Ruseva, aka Megalangela. Please check my art at www.megalangela.vip.
America First Warehouse was really the most patriotic venue that you can ever imagine. We wanted to build something for people to be able to come to and feel so comfortable and so relaxed, because there is nothing out there like it. We give an opportunity for people to really feel good about themselves and about this great country.
Corrupt judges, broken families, families torn apart. This isn't justice. If you've been wronged by the system, join us. Don't stand alone. Hi, I'm Gary Jacobs, president of Americans for Legal Reform. We're the oldest legal reform group in the United States. The justice system in the United States should be transparent, fair, and open to everybody and accessible. Unfortunately, many times that's not the case. At Americans for Legal Reform, we are here to help. Join the movement. Visit AmericansForLegalReform.com and help reform the system before it fails you.
The America First Ultra MAGA Store. For all your MAGA needs. We sell t-shirts, tumblers, flags, hats, sneakers, bumper stickers, and a whole lot more. The most patriotic America First retail store. The America First Ultra MAGA Store.
Welcome, everybody, to the Not So Newlywed Show, where three couples are going to compete for really great prizes. Okay, Donna, we asked Mike, who complained first on your honeymoon, you or him?
What do I think?
Yeah, what do you think?
I think he said.
Lisa, this ain't the SATs. Just tell us what. Donna, who complained first on the honeymoon?
I'm sure it was me, but I have no idea.
Jordan is right.
No, it's always me.
What celebrity would you pick for a one-day pass?
For me?
Yeah, for you, not for him.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon! Wow! Who do you hate the most on her side? That rotten no.
There's so many choices.
Thank you all, and thank you for coming out.
Hi, my name is Elena Ruseva, aka Megalangela. Please check my art at www.megalangela.vip.
America First Warehouse was really the most patriotic venue that you can ever imagine. We wanted to build something for people to be able to come to and feel so comfortable and so relaxed, because there is nothing out there like it. We give an opportunity for people to really feel good about themselves and about this great country.
Welcome back to Liberty's Cage. Shane, we have talked about recidivism and life truly beyond the bars. You have big ideas for getting people back on their feet, businesses outside of the prisons to give inmates job and skills. Lay it all out for us.
I mean, there is a lot that we should be doing, and I think that really goes along with President Trump's agenda as far as bringing jobs. You mentioned the jobs. I just think that there needs to be better community involvement, partnership with corporations and the prisons and the prison system to where you could have a company like Amazon build a factory outside the prison fence. And then I could be doing my time in prison. I'm building a relationship with HR at Amazon, and I'm building a rapport with my manager, the people that are training me there. So then whenever I'm released into society, I go home and I already have a job lined up with Amazon, because there's Amazons everywhere. Same with Walmart, or same, it could be anything really. And so I think there's a better way to do that. I think another thing that we could really work on that helps, which the prison fellowship program that I went through, they really focused on bringing the family back into the inmate or offender's life. And so it's one thing to get your freedom back. It's another thing to try to repair those relationships that have been damaged by the incarceration. So if you can get ahead of the curve while you're in prison, and I think that means setting up counseling, or setting up therapy, or setting up time with, the children and the husband, the wife, the husband, the mom, whatever it is, for them to spend time together to work on some of these relationships under a controlled environment, where maybe there's a counselor present, or maybe there's a therapist present, to kind of get these things out in the open, to deal with some of these things first before you put this guy, like kick this guy out of prison. Now he goes home and he's got his wife bearing down on him, and his kids are rebelling, and it's just like this whole thing, because whenever you're gone, these relationships evolve. The absent father is not there, and so the kid is kind of doing his own thing because he's not under the supervision of the father, and the mom's at work all the time, so the kid's kind of growing up alone. So there's these different dynamics that shift, and we've really seen that impact the J6 community, where fathers are gone and then they come home and they kind of feel like the odd man out now. So if we can relieve that stress off of those situations of the inmate coming home, to where there's kind of already an understanding of what's going to transpire when they get home, I believe you can relieve a lot of that stress, because there is a lot of pressure for them to get their lives back to where they were before they went in, when they get out. And so if you can relieve some of this stress, and there's a better understanding, better communication, and they have tools equipped to help them respond appropriately in these relationships with their children, with their loved ones, you're setting them up for success. And I think this is a relatively simple thing to do. I don't think any of these things that are, like you say, I have these plans and these ideas, I don't think these are expensive or outlandish or out of the realm of possibility. And I think they're very reasonable, and I think we could see some really good impacts if we could implement some of these things.
Going back to the family ties, federal inmates earn 12 cents to $1.15 an hour versus the $7.25 federal minimum wage. Extra funds could pay back their restitution, could pay for legal fees, and support their families on the outside. How would fair wages while you were in prison would have helped you and your family, Shane?
I mean, fair wages, even a decent, doesn't have to be the $7.25 minimum. It could be $3 to $5 an hour, where you can be an asset instead of, because and that's another thing. The dynamic, the family dynamic changes, because typically, and I know this is biblical, this might ruffle some feathers, but typically the man is the leader and the wife is the helper, whatever. But the man has been having to have his hand out the whole time, saying, hey, I need you to send me some money. I need you to come visit me. And you're having all these requests where you're kind of at the mercy of everybody else. Instead of, if you're in prison, like, I want you to come see me, and I've earned a couple $100 working in the factory. I would like to pay for you to come down here and visit. Or I would love to send home money for little Johnny's school supplies, or I'm going to pay my child support up, or instead of, us borrowing money from grandma, we're going to pay grandma's rent this month. There's just imagine the reward and the positive to your self-esteem and your self-worth that would be while you're in prison, as opposed to being like, oh, dad's in prison again, and he's using up all mom's money, or this, that, or the other. Instead of, now you can be an asset, you can be useful to your community. And I just think that's something that would be simple, and I think it would be so useful.
Not only does it help somebody's egos, jobs reduce 68% of recidivism and are reoffending again. And that's a huge thing. I mean, even during COVID, there were studies that were shown that because They didn't have enough beds for people because they had to separate people, that the recidivism rate in America went down to single digits when it was very high on the double digit scale. And I don't even know what it was exactly. I don't want to quote it. We can talk about that another time. But the mere fact that they were sent home to be with their families, whether they were on ankle monitors, not allowed on the internet, whatever that is, truly shows that hopefully with this new Federal Bureau of Prisons director that's in, that does want to look at home confinement more and expand with the First and Second Step Act, that is something that goes to show that when you are reintegrated with your family and you can start putting your life back together, being a contributing member of society, then you aren't going to be, you're not going to reoffend and go back into prison.
And I think that kind of goes along with, and that may be like an extra step in probation. Like you get, typically people will get probation their first offense, and they usually mess that up. Send them to a prison for a little while, let them see what it's like, and then give them an opportunity to come home on home confinement. And then that will be basically their last chance. But I think that if somebody could live down that home confinement, it's cheaper for the society to not have to keep that person in prison. It's better for them because they get to be home with their family, they get to work, they get to contribute to society. I just think there's a lot of merit to that conversation that we could have, and I think that hopefully, if they're not already considering that, maybe we can put a bug in their ear to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we, like you said, we have to have these healthy conversations. We need to sit down because it's not just working with the Federal Bureau of Prisons and the Department of Justice. It's about working with Congress so they can pass legislation. Because trust me, I voted 3 times for President Trump for these executive orders that he has put through. But what's going to happen in 4 years if there's another regime change? They're going to come in and reverse all these executive orders. So we need do nothing Congress. Truly do nothing. I think they work 143 days a year. I think they worked, 12 days in June. They're off basically the entire month of July and August. That's a problem. But we need to get in there and talk to them about things that truly are affecting their constituents and affecting the American people, because we need legislation passed that can't be turned over so easily.
Well, and I think too, we have, like we've talked about before, we have a unique opportunity being from the right or conservative Republicans, whatever you want to call us, libertarians. We have an opportunity to approach this from a different angle. And I feel like if we can get some of these old school, more centrist Democrats and people that are in the same sphere as we are, working towards justice reform, that are a part of that camp, that can approach their representatives, then we can all kind of come together and attack this as a whole. It's a societal problem. It's not a political problem,
No, you're absolutely right. We need to cross the aisle and have these conversations and truly bring in even other people. They need to go into the jails. I mean, I remember when you were in Louisiana and Senator Kennedy was coming down and we were trying to get their attention for them to come talk to you. And it's like, even in the DC jail, they go and they clean everything up. It's not like they can't smell the fresh paint and the bleach and all of that to come in. They should know something immediately is wrong. They should send their staffers in to visit with inmates so they can see the process. The visitation system's broken. The grievance system is broken. The commissary system is broken. So many of these things truly need to be rehabbed in the federal system.
Well, I think about, I was thinking about it as you're saying that. When I was at Pollock, Louisiana, I was in a cell where literally the water ran for months on end. I don't know how, I measured it. It was like a gallon every, I don't remember what it was, but it was a ridiculous, I don't know how much money that cost. My water bill here in Houston was a ridiculous amount the other day, $200 and something for a month of water bill. But what I'm saying is, how much money did they just waste because they don't have, they said that their budget has ran out and they don't have the ability to buy any more tools, not tools, the equipment they needed to fix those sinks. And so, and like you say, it's always this, it's like a rat race when somebody's coming. Oh, somebody important's coming. We got to paint cover up the black mold. We got to get the feces off the wall. We got to do this, that, the other, get the loogies off the floor, or whatever it is. Instead of it being like that all the time, we wanted to put on a show for these people so nothing gets changed. If you let everything be broke down and then Senator Kennedy comes in there and he's like, what in the hell is going on in here? Well, our budget ran out. It wasn't enough. Well, okay, it's good to know that. So now I can go back and lobby for more money for the BOP to be able to fix all this stuff. Instead, it's just this big cover up because they don't want to look bad. The wardens don't want to look bad. The guards don't want to look bad. And then as a result, they make the inmates run around like crazy trying to prepare for these people to come. It's just it's a dog and pony show.
They need to experience it for themselves, right? They need to go in there and they need to, from everything, from what the families endure on the outside to what the inmates endure on the inside, I think they would absolutely be shocked.
Can I make an announcement real quick?
Yes.
We are honored to have our first sponsor on Liberty's Cage it's Sugar Creek Goods. It's a small Indiana company. They make soaps and all kinds of lotions, body butters, insect repellent, shampoos, beard oils. But if you go to sugarcreekgoods.com, promo code Liberty, that's our promo code. You get a 15% discount if you use promo code Liberty. But I tell you, this soap I have, you can't really see it really good right here, but man, it smells phenomenal. It's made by Patriots, made in America, and we're honored to have them as our first sponsor. And so, thank you so much, sugarcreekgoods.com, promo code Liberty.
And they also, not only do you get 15% off, part of their proceeds go back to helping January 6 defendants. This particular will go back to Stand in the Gap and the work that we are doing for January 6 defendants. So huge thanks to our listeners. You are the heart of this fight. We honor Bart Shively, a Marine and Patriot, and every single January 6 family that is still hurting. Keep standing with us. Donate for Bart. Push for reform, and let's fix this system together. You can visit standinthegap.foundation to support us. Share your insight. We want to hear your stories, and join us in saving America. Liberty's Cage is quite literally breaking chains. Thank you, Patriots. God bless you. God bless your family, and God bless America.
God bless you all.